Hi, this is Catherine Dubberly, the Answer Lady. Today I have a really unusual project to share with you. I had a nifty knitter long loom on which I broke a peg. This loom is about the same gauge as the authentic knitting board, and I really like the authentic knitting board better. So I thought, why not, instead of bemoaning the loss or trying to repair the nifty knitter to good as new, why not use it as the basis for a new project? Here's the plan. When the pegs are removed from this board, there will be evenly spaced holes. Oddly enough, on the bottom of the board, there are holes spaced in between the ones that are used for the pegs. They're not quite the same size, but for my idea, this shouldn't make a difference. If we remove all the pegs and drill through all the holes, then I'll have room for twice as many needles and have a knitting board of a completely unique gauge. I have another knitting board that you can see here called the Noble Knitter. The Noble Knitter is a very nice board, and for it, cotter pins have been used in place of other possibilities for needles. It's a strange idea, but oddly enough, I really like knitting on the cotter pins. I find them very smooth and very easy to work with. So the plan is to use cotter pins for the new needles on the newly constructed board and save all of the old needles that I pull out in case I ever break any pegs on another nifty knitter loom. Cotter pins are something that you can buy at the hardware store. Goodness only knows what they're really used for, but they make very cool knitting needles. I actually found the best deal on cotter pins at Harbor Freight. I got an assortment package of all the ones you'll see in the pictures shortly for $3.99, which was a much better deal than buying them in small packages at Lowe's or Home Depot. First, we'll use a twist drill to drill through all of the holes from the bottom to the top. For this, we don't need very much padding because we can leave the pegs in place, and that'll give us a way to know for sure when we go all the way through the loom form. It's helpful to have another person holding on to the other end of the loom from what you're working on to stabilize it. Once we flip the loom over and we don't have any distance between the bottom of the loom and the table, it's definitely a good plan to have a pad of newspaper, or better yet, a board, to catch your drill bit as it makes the distance all the way through. Before working on the flip side, of course, it'll be time to remove the pegs. You'll see in a minute that I couldn't get out the broken peg, so when we change hands, it's because my husband is helping me do it. He's a professional mechanic, so he not only has very strong hands, he has all the right tools. The pegs that I remove are now set aside for another purpose later. Who knows, I may get crazy and build another loom with them or just save them for repairs. You can see that the holes are two different sizes. We matched the drill bits to the size of the holes that were already present. But it's not going to matter because they're going to be filled with an epoxy putty, and the cotter pins fit easily into both kinds of holes. Unfortunately, I discovered that moving around the end of the board, the spacing on the existing holes was not the same as it was all along the board, and I had the idea that I would like to be able to work circular knitting all the way around the board. That would require that there be pegs evenly spaced all the way around the board. So we remeasured and made some different holes than already existed. Again, it's not going to be a crisis that there are extras because they'll be filled in with putty. And in one case, I just plain measured wrong. That's the only word for it. And I had to ask my husband to enlarge a hole so that when I'm spacing the needles, which will really be cotter pins, of course, I can move the cotter pins around to make those spacings even, since I didn't center the holes quite correctly on the distance. The new holes require that there be pilot holes so as to make the drill bit bite the proper place in the form. That's what my husband is doing with a pocket knife, making a little pilot hole for it, the new holes. The putty that we're going to be using is a Loctite product, Loctite. That's the brand name. And then it's a 2-part epoxy putty that comes in a little plastic tube. It's like a thick crayon, sort of, and the inside of the crayon is a different material than the outside. When you knead the two things together, it becomes softer and it heats up, and for a brief period of time, it's very malleable. And that's the period of time that we're going to use it to fill the holes and to capture the needles and get everything set just the way we want it. Once this stuff has hardened, it's very hard. It's sandable, it's durable, and I think it's going to do the trick. I've used it a great deal in the past to make tools for machine knitters, which some people may have seen in my book, Cheap Tricks. So we're going to try it for loom knitters now. My first plan involved making a long worm of the putty and sticking little bits of it in each hole, but that did not turn out to secure the needles very well. So you see that I changed tactics and laid a long worm across several holes and then tried to press it in as I secured the needles. In the end, that did work better, though it takes some doing. It seemed like it would be a good idea to fill in from the bottom as well for extra security, so I did the same thing along the bottom of the loom, only it's much easier because I don't have to work around the needles here. As I worked, my hands got dirtier with the putty, and it became more difficult to get a nice, neat bead, so my first part of my work looks much neater than the second part. However, later on, I sanded it all off, and it all is pretty nice, pretty smooth, not bad looking, and let's see how it knits. First, I tried double knitting with stockinette, and it does a really nice job of that with worsted weight yarn. Then I tried single knitting. I just continued on from my double knitting, wrapped the extra stitches all the way around the board, and continued with worsted weight yarn. It soon became apparent that worsted weight is much too thick to do a comfortable job on this new gauge. The new gauge, by the way, turned out about 3/8 of an inch distance from center to center of needle. So I switched to some sport weight, and that was obviously much better. And it made me wonder, maybe this could be a sock loom. So the last thing you see me knitting is some sock weight yarn. And you know, I believe that it might work. I ended up with a total of 54 needles, which is on the low side for an adult sock loom. But it may work great for me because I wear size 6.5 shoes, and that is about what I would normally use to knit a sock. I haven't knitted socks on a sock loom before because I have a circular sock machine and a passive knitting machine, and I don't knit them by hand with 2 needles. I have needle knit and loom knit socks, but never with smaller yarn than worsted weight so far. Seriously, I am not sure that I want to do any hand knitting with fingering weight yarn, but I won't know till I try. So I'll let you know how it all turns out. In the meantime, I hope you found some inspiration here. I can't be the only one with the broken loom who's thinking it's way too good to throw away. Bye now, and happy knitting.